Hello and welcome back to another West London Sport podcast. I'm Dan Bennett and I'm here with Ian McCullough, Kosky and Kevin Gallen to chat QPR. Not a whole lot of football to talk about this week as QPR's game against Sheffield United on Monday was postponed and so was the game against Swansea on Saturday due to a COVID outbreak within the squad. But luckily for us, the transfer window is just around the corner. Mark Wolverton's obviously already said that they want to looking to bring in some players in January. If you haven't seen our last video, we discussed Mark Wolverton wanting a central defender and gave our thoughts on whether that is a position they need. But in terms of what else they kind of need, Kev, I think you mentioned last week that perhaps a striker is something that they should possibly look at. Why do you think that is, and what kind of striker do you think maybe they should be looking at that maybe they don't have already, and what would that bring to the squad?
Well, the reason why I said striker, because I just think I'm going down the Neil Warnock way of thinking. You can never have enough strikers in your squad, but also it's always good to have a look if you're on your bench and you want to make a change, or you're losing, or you need a goal. It's always good to have the options of having some strikers on the bench. What kind of striker? I think maybe more of if with Lyndon Dykes is sort of a target man type player where he can win headers. And if he's injured, we sort of struggle a little bit without his sort of mobility and his aerial power. So maybe something similar to him. But it's a difficult one because we can talk about strikers, but who's available? Money if QPR got to spend, is the chairman willing to put his hand in the pocket and have a right go and think, which they did last January, which pretty much saved the season, but I would say maybe even saved the manager's job at the time, because it was a bit of a slippery slope this time last season, and the signing of Charlie Austin and Johansson made a massive difference, not only to the team, but to the whole support and everything and the feel-good factor of the club. So I wouldn't be surprised if we go and get a couple of players in just for a little bit of a push, a little bit more help for the squad to get into the playoffs. And I do believe if we get into the playoffs and we have a fit squad, we've got as good a chance as anyone on our day.
Yeah, I mean, what else would you look at when you look at the squad that you think potentially they need in January, apart from a striker? Obviously, you mentioned the wing-backs there. Is that something they need to look at bringing in players, or is it just a case of getting people fit? And what else really could add to the squad to give them that boost?
Well, I think Ian said it last week, and when he said it, I was sort of nodding my head and agreeing with him. Lee Wallace seems to me that he can't last that many games. He comes in, he plays really well, picks up a muscle injury, he's out for 2 months, comes back, plays really well. That's sort of been the story of his QPR career. So a left-footed specialist wing-back, I think, could be a priority for the manager. Because when Lee Wallace does play in that position, you can see the difference of having a specialist left back type player in that position, and it makes a big difference to the team. It's
tricky, isn't it? Because it's not like they don't have options in the wing back areas. It's just that they've all been injured. I mean, when you look at someone like Sam McCall, for example, who's when he's played, he looks like he's done pretty well, but just has not been able to stay fit and is injured at all. Is it almost like a case of if they're going to bring one in, they need to get someone out, or do you think they can bring someone else in with what they've got already? And, would you look at maybe trying to get McCallum back to Norwich and get someone else in as a replacement, if that is an option for QPR?
Well, that's a trickier injury, because from what I've read, he's had an operation on his hamstring. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
And I pulled my hamstring a few times, and if you're not 100% right and you're sprinting up and down that line for 90 minutes, that can just go like that, and you're back to square one and you're out for 2 months. So that's why I think what Ian said last week, a left back, maybe a striker. And I know the managers keep saying about the centre half, and he obviously feels there's a problem with Device. But I think left back and striker for me.
Yeah, what do you think, Ian, about the McCallum thing? Would you potentially look at getting someone in as a replacement for him and trying to get him back to Norwich? Or what would you do about that in terms of bringing the full back?
No, I wouldn't replace him. I think you sign someone to go along with him. I think it's shown that they've got 4 wing backs and all 4 are currently kind of recovering.
They need a fifth with what they've got.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, McCullough. Kev touched on there. Wallace is more of the problem, really, because he just can't stay fit, it seems, for more than sort of 3 or 4 games. But I mean, the way they play and what the demands of a wing back, and how physically difficult it is. You almost like in terms of strikers, you want to almost rack them and stack them. So you have guys that can just come in, and it's Adoma's done very well. I think Moses. Adebayo's done quite well, but again, he's a player that's got a kind of checkered injury history as well. So you wouldn't really want to be hanging your hat on him staying fit between now and the end of the season. So, I mentioned him last week, George Cox, the lad at Fortuna Sittard, who's come through at Brighton. He very nearly signed for them in the summer. He was at the training ground. They just couldn't get a deal over the line. I think it was, I wanted too much money, and then they went for McCallum, but they may revisit that. Try and get him in. He's 23. He's a natural left back. Decent pedigree where he's come from. They might go back there again. But certainly, I think with McCallum, they probably paid a loan fee for him as well.
Yeah, I imagine it wasn't free.
I imagine they don't want to just kind of, Norwich have given the okay for him to rehab at QPR and undergo surgery under QPR's jurisdiction. So, that sort of tends to suggest that, he will be staying to the end of the season. But yeah, and to be fair, he's done really well when he has played. He looks a really good player. I think Norwich's problems at the minute, they're not down to left back, are they? They got sort of various other issues they need to address to stay in the Premier League. So I don't see them, trying to get rid of McCallum. As for strikers, yeah, you can't have too many but the good thing with Rangers have been that they haven't really struggled for goals, and they are getting goals from all around the park, which is something they haven't done in the past. So they have been relying on strikers to get goals. But, midfielders are chipping in with goals. You've got Willock Chair. Even Luke Amos has chipped in, the centre-backs are chipping in with goals. So there's, the goals aren't really a problem. But, you can't really have too many goal scorers in your squad, can you?
Yeah, I think for me, like, when I look at it, it's like the priority's got to be someone that can come in and fill in for Illya's chair when he goes away at the African Cup of Nations. Like, obviously, we're not sure how long he's going to be away for. It might only be, a few weeks or whatever. They might not go too far in it, so he might be back quite soon. But I just think he fills such an important role in this team, the way he advances the ball from midfield into attack and links the two. And I just think that when he goes away, that his loss is really going to be felt. The only trouble is that I'm not sure you can find someone that does exactly what he does in the January transfer window. I think that's going to be really difficult to find. So they might have to be willing to accept getting someone in who's not quite as good, but at least can do the chair role while he's away, because I do think that he is going to be a massive miss for the club. But I suppose, Ben, as well, one of the other things to think about is not just who is coming in, but potentially if someone's going to go out, which would obviously alter the club's transfer plans massively. I mean, Rob Dickey's caught the headlines this year. You got Seny Dieng's done well since he's come in. Chris Willock's obviously been probably the highlight of the season, and Chair I just mentioned there. Do you think QPR should really be looking to hold on to these players now, or is it a case of if a big offer comes in January, they should be looking at to let someone go and maybe invest that elsewhere? Or what do you think they should do about that?
I think it always depends on how big the offer is, because I say every player has got his price. And the fact is, come January, you do get a lot of clubs, particularly those that are either trying to stay in the Premier League, or sometimes other clubs that are trying to just push themselves, up into the top 2 in the Championship or whatever, who will do desperate things because they want to take that, that extra step, and they will offer silly money. So you have to wait and see what it is. I think obviously for QPR point of view, you want to hang on to those players as long as you can, and particularly this season, because all the guys you mentioned there are all key members of the side. They're key members of the squad that you hope is going to put together or continue a challenge for the playoffs this year. And you also look, I think, at what sort of stage of development those players are at. Rob Dickey's in his 2nd season at this level, Willock in his 2nd season at this level, Seny Dieng Chair maybe a little further down the line, has had a bit more experience, but as you've already mentioned, Dan, possibly we're not going to see Illya's Chair much in January, although I believe there's already some rumblings about whether the African Cup of Nations will actually go ahead, given what's been going on with COVID and so on. So we see. But as always, I just think, you know, if the club get bids for these kind of players, it's a real positive, you know, because you think of all the years that nobody was putting in bids for QPR players because none of them had any resale value, and now, you know, we've seen the model that there is of people being signed from either it's from a bigger club's reserves or from a lower division like Rob Dickey, and being developed and made into players that attract attention. That's really got to be a good thing. But as you say, Dan, it could change the picture if somebody came in with a silly bid for someone like Illya's Chair, because then all of a sudden the club might be looking at it and thinking, well, if we can get X amount of money for Illya's Chair, we can spend that on maybe 3 players in positions we need. So it does change the dynamic, but I think you look at the season overall, everyone would agree, I think the season's gone pretty well so far. So for me, you want to change as little as possible, really, and that means hanging on to those players if you can.
Yeah, I think the potential reward of what keeping hold of those players could result in outweighs the kind of fee I think you'd get in January. I think it's worth just rejecting any offers, unless it is, I think, would have to be a really ridiculous offer for the players I've mentioned and maybe a couple of others as well. Because, you know, if you hang on to them, they're right in the playoff mix, and you're potentially talking about, you know, going for promotion come the end of the season, which comes with massive rewards. What do you think, Kev? Do you think it would really have to be a ridiculous offer for one of those guys that I mentioned to go? And what's your take on that?
I don't. It would have to be, like Ben said, a silly offer, and every player has his price. I can't see the club accepting unless it's ridiculous. But what would have to happen is, and the scouting department right now should, just in case, if Illya's Chair or Rob Dickey, they should have a list of players who, okay, if he goes, we'll go after these. They should have a list of 5 right-sided centre-halves, 5 number 10s. Will it position? They should have this already. It should already be in place just in case we get a ridiculous offer or silly money. Okay, we'll get that, and then we'll go and get this as his replacement straight away. I don't think anyone will leave in January. I think the chairman, Ruben, is a smart enough guy to realise that QPR have got a really good opportunity to get into the playoffs, maybe add a couple of players where the manager feels need strengthening and go for the playoffs. And like I just said 10 minutes ago, QPR on their day, especially at home, you know, in the playoffs, with the crowd behind them, there will be a very difficult team to beat in the playoffs. That's what I believe. So I think the aim is to get someone in to help, a couple of players in January, and go for the playoffs. And we've got a good chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, without the postponements, I think Saturday would have marked half the season would have been gone. Obviously, it's not turned out like that, so we're going to have to wait, I think, sort of 2-3 weeks, isn't it, until the next game against Bournemouth. But I think, Ian, you said at the start of the year when we did our predictions that it has to be playoffs for a successful season for QPR. I mean, they're on track for that. Have you been pleased, and have they met your expectations so far in this first half of the season?
Yeah, I think so. You can't really argue with where they are this time of year. You're taking being 5th, midway through December in August. So they've done that. Just touching back a little bit what we were talking about previously, I do think, just having watched Bournemouth and Fulham last Friday, one thing Rangers I think do lack a little bit is that, we haven't mentioned it before, that kind of real express pace. That's a real difference maker. I think they need someone. I mean, Bournemouth have got it with Jayden Anthony. Fulham have got it all over the park. That's one thing Rangers do lack, and I do think that's the only mild criticism I would have, that they don't, the succession signings have been quite good, like Samuel for Willock, etc., and potentially Jimmy Dunn for Rob Dickey, that kind of thing, but they haven't really replaced Bryce Samuel in like for like. And I do think that to have that someone on the bench who can just come on and really terrorise a back four or back whatever. With 20 minutes to go, it could be the difference between going up and not going up. But back onto what you say, or where they are, yeah, I think they've done pretty well. They've had a sticky patch and they kind of got through it. They are scoring goals. They have tightened up at the back. Yeah, I think they would have Saturday. I think they potentially could have beaten Swansea. You know, I would have fancied QPR against Swansea. I think Swansea like to pass the ball a lot. They don't do a lot with it. I think they're beating Swansea. Then you go into like that kind of match against Bournemouth in a real, you know, on a real solid footing. But you know, the 2 weeks off going into that fixture, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. You get players fit again. But I mean, Kev would be more. You'd be able to talk more authoritatively a bit than I would about, you know, what that's like for a player to have a kind of 3 weeks without a game and going into a big game. It's a good thing or a bad thing.
I think it can work. I think it can work both ways. Me personally, you know, I would be wanting to play like week in, week out because you get into that rhythm. But I think it's actually a good thing because we've got key players out. You know, Dykes will hopefully be coming back for the Bournemouth game. He'll be refreshed. Moses, I'm not sure about Wallace. Is he there? Is he going to be available? But from what I'm hearing from them, you know, just listening to interviews, that last week they were all like 10 to 14 days away. So that should be, hopefully, there should be ready and available for the 27th against Bournemouth, which will be a tough game because, like you did say, Ian, I watched a bit of the Bournemouth-Fulham game the other week, and you know, I have to say, looking at those two teams on the night, I would say they're the two best teams in the league, and they are in those positions at the moment. So that's a tough game. Hopefully, QPR 2 weeks off or 3 weeks to the last game will be refreshed. Injuries coming back, it might work in QPR's favour. We'll only know on the day, and it's one of those. It can work either way. I can't really. We'll only find out after the match on the 27th.
As a QPR fan, Kev, have you been encouraged by what you've seen this first half of the season? Are you feeling pretty positive? I mean, obviously 5th place in the league. The last time out wasn't great. It was against Stoke. Obviously, could have gone, I guess, either way. Really, a lot of missed chances. But are you happy overall?
I can't. Well, I mean, the games I've been to and I've seen, and the Stoke game, QPR easily could have got a draw out of that game. I know Stoke come and they've done a bit of a number, but 1-0 down, we miss a penalty. You score that penalty, the whole thing changes. I mean, the other game I seen QPR lose was Bristol City at home. I mean, we absolutely battered them and we end up losing. You just like, their keepers had a worldie, the Bristol City keeper on the day, the Stoke keepers had a worldie. So I've never seen the only game I see QPR really outplayed was the Fulham game and got a bit of a tank in. But other than that, QPR have been well in every game, and the ones they've lost, they could easily have won those games. So I think QPR are really looking, I think they're good, 5th in the table. This little break hopefully will do them the world of good. Injuries coming back, and it's all to play for.
Ben, what's been your take on the first half of the season?
Well, first up, Dan, I've got to point out that when we sat down in the summer and made our predictions, I said QPR would finish 5th. So
well, it's half
at the moment,
you know, that's just. I'm not willing to give you that quite yet.
Okay, fair enough. But I think what I would say is we'd all be happy with if that is where they end up. I mean, even with the postponed games, they will go into Christmas in the top 6 with a couple of games in hand, and that's a tremendous situation. Really, you'd have taken that at the start of the season. I think really what's impressed me most is that we've seen a real resilience about the side. We've seen a determination not to give up, and when they've been 2 goals down late on in games, away at Reading, home to Barnsley earlier in the season, they just kept going. I would say recently, home to Huddersfield was another good example where they were dominating the game. It was still 0-0, and you know, you think, is the ball going to go in the net? And they kept going, and they got their rewards. And I feel there's a real spirit there that we've often not seen in QPR sides in recent years, which suggests the team ethic is good, the attitude is good, I think it's all been positive, to be quite honest. And however, I think the important point really to make, I know for a number of fans, it will probably be the case that if they don't end up getting promoted at the end of the season, and that's a cause for disappointment. But I think you've got to say, again, in the context of seasons we've had lately, that if they can sustain that promotion challenge at least and get close, you've got to see that as a positive and indicator that things are going in the right direction. And you look on 2021 as a whole, what a year it's been, really. I mean, if the football season was over calendar years, Queen's Park Rangers would be heading for promotion, no question about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a little concerned around that time where, they lost to Peterborough, the heavy defeat at Fulham. I was thinking they're going to come back, but since then the form has been really good. Taking away the Stoke game, obviously, and I think what we've learned about this team is, they're going to take risks, they're going to make mistakes that are going to lead to opposition goals. They're probably going to be a bit more open than maybe some fans would like, but like what you said there, Ben, they've got this quality of they never look like they're beaten. They're always in games, they always look like they can come back even when it's up against them, and that is a great quality, I think, to have when you're going for promotion. And yeah, it's been a really good 2021 that completely turned it around from the year before, so let's hope that it can end the way that everyone wants it to. Well, with that, we'll wrap it up. Hopefully we have some actual football games to talk about next time we do one of these, but we'll have to see how the Christmas period plays out. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and leave the video a like, and we'll be back again with another video very soon.